All right. I am going to try my absolute hardest. Sorry, did I just burst your eardrums? I hope I didn't. Oh my God. I'm going to try my hardest not to have my blood pressure raise through the roof when I tell you this. It's absolutely mind boggling, but I just get so worked up when I talk about sovereign wealth funds, when I talk about America, right? Because the system isn't broken, it's working exactly the way that people in charge are wanting it to. It's working the way it's designed. Okay. I know this sounds absolutely crazy. You're like, oh my God, she's a conspiracy theorist. No, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is like actual history, stuff that really happened. Like, and once you see how this works, you're never going to look at America the same way again. You'll never look at politics the same way again. Okay. Because today we're talking about the biggest players in the game that you've never heard of. And that's by design as well. We're talking about sovereign wealth funds, okay? Global mega funds that are so massive and powerful and so unregulated that they can buy up swaths of America the way that you would go out and buy groceries or go buy some ugly plastic clothing from Shein, okay? Oh my God, this is incredible stuff. So once you understand who owns what, your everything becomes extremely clear. And I'm actually going to give a fantastic example of sovereign wealth funds taking advantage of Americans and taking advantage of America, our stupid leadership, to be more specific. Okay, so it's all gonna wrap together when I explain to you Chicago's infamous parking meter disaster, and it's gonna look a lot less like a local screw up and a lot more like a chapter in some crazy corruption conspiracy. Like, it's just insane. Okay, so this is I actually might make this a series, America for Sale, right? This is America for Sale. Okay, so before we get into what happened, we have to know who the players are in this game, right? So what is a sovereign wealth fund? I pulled up a little clip here from Investopedia, and Investopedia describes it as a state owned investment fund used to benefit the country's economy and its citizens, right? And that's such like a sanitized, cutesy version, right? But a sovereign wealth fund, if you ask someone like me who stays up late at night reading about history and ruminating over all the times that America has done just the stupidest things to give itself up to foreigners, you would ask me, and I would say to you that a sovereign wealth fund, or you might hear people call them SWFs, it's basically a government run investment fund. Okay, so it's not like the Federal Reserve or, a state run treasury or anything like that. I need you to think bigger. Think of like the biggest, most aggressive hedge fund that you've ever seen on Wall Street, right? Now imagine that it's 50 to 60 times bigger than that investment firm. And then imagine that it's completely global. It operates outside of the reach of like or entities like the SEC, right? It's completely, I mean, sovereign, right? It's its own. It's literally in its own league. This is just money that's out there, like a humongous, the whale of all whales. I can't even begin to describe to you how insane this is when I start showing you the money. Okay, so let's take a quick look before I get into the deeper parts of it real quick. So these are the largest sovereign wealth funds here, right? This is the assets under management of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, and this data comes from Q3 of 2023. Oh yeah, August 2023. Okay, so what you need to know about sovereign wealth funds is that the revenues typically come from commodities, right? So when you talk about like the Saudis selling oil, when you talk about Finland, right? Or what is this? Norway, when they sell their natural gas, their oil, things like that, that money that they make from the state taking those assets and selling it off on the market, right? When you're going to gas up your car, that goes into the sovereign wealth fund's coffers, y'all. So it's usually, like I said, commodity revenues, oil, gas, minerals, whatever. And they're going to pour that surplus money that's brought in from those funds into that cash pile, and that creates these sovereign wealth funds. So you can see Norway's government pension fund global has 1.375 million billion. So this is basically a $1.3 trillion fund, and that was in 2023. So I need you to think about it, right? Every time that commodities start fluctuating like crazy, right? When oil prices shoot up, these sovereign wealth funds literally start bloating like Joey Chestnut's gut on what is it? What holiday is it? July 4th at the hot dog eating contest. Like, we're talking about insane, just swelling, massive amounts of revenue coming in, okay? And I'm going to give a historical example here, but I just need you to take a minute to wrap your mind around everything that I'm explaining to you. Kuwait, right? $801 billion. Kuwait is so tiny, like it's insanely small. If you were to look at a map and you looked at, the US compared to Kuwait in size, you would never know that they have $801 billion in their sovereign wealth fund. And that was back then. That's almost 3 years ago. Like, we're talking crazy, crazy money, okay? And what you need to understand is that these sovereign wealth funds are not like, oh, it's just a little happy pension. No, these mofos are out here investing aggressively. They're like degenerate gamblers trying to just make the largest return. I shouldn't say degenerate. They're just looking for any opportunity to exploit to make massive gains on their money. And interestingly enough, I know that there's somebody that's watching this right now that's probably like, oh, does America have a sovereign wealth fund? No, we don't, technically. Trump, I remember there was something a few years ago or a couple of years back where he was like, I think we should have a sovereign wealth fund in America. But I think that was just like, his random musings and ramblings. However, actually, Alaska has something kind of similar to a sovereign wealth fund. And if you live in Alaska and you're watching this, then you probably are familiar with what I'm talking about, right? They send out some kind of significant checks. I think it's like $3,000 or $5,000 annually to the citizens that are living there. So if you're in Alaska and you're watching this, I would love to know. You don't have to tell me all your business, obviously, but like, what's it like? You know what I'm saying? What's your equivalent of a sovereign wealth fund? Because obviously it's not for the whole nation, it's just for the state. But Alaska pumps out a lot of oil, so they make a lot of money. They have a lot of minerals and things like that up there as well. And they disperse that to their citizens. I'm surprised Texas doesn't have one since we got all this oil, but I know we like privatization, so it is what it is. But what I need you to know, right? They're investing aggressively, globally, and silently, okay? Like, you would never know. If I bet you 90% of the people that are watching, you have no clue that any of this even exists. This is just, oh my goodness, okay? So, like I said, sovereign wealth funds tied to commodities. When commodity prices surge, especially things like oil, sovereign wealth funds explode in size. So remember how I told you I was going to give you a historical example. Let's take it back all the way to the 70s, right? 70s was a really wild time, especially in the financial history world. If you know, you know. But specifically, let's go to 1973. You're like, oh, I already know. The Yom Kippur War. You would be correct. After the conflict that happened, the OPEC nations hit the US and Europe with a historic oil embargo, right? Like, it was insane. You can talk to anybody who was alive and driving back during the 70s, and they'll talk about like the gas was just, it was out. Like, there was lines for gas, and sometimes people would just run out and there wasn't anything left for people to fill their cars up with. It was pandemonium. Like, oil prices quadrupled, and the countries that were selling oil started stacking massive surpluses. It was insane. And so all of these countries that were stacking up all of this money said, well, gosh, I need somewhere to put all of it. And thus, the first sovereign wealth funds were born. The Yom Kippur War is where all this began. Isn't that crazy to think about? Like, I shouldn't say all of it began, because sovereign wealth funds did technically exist before this time, but this is when they really began their rise as like significant global powers. So as far as I'm concerned, this is the beginning. This is like the inception, because like they started cropping up all over. Many of these sovereign wealth funds are a part of like, Saudi Arabia. They're all in the Middle East, right? A lot of them. Obviously, China's in there a couple times. And you've got Norway at the largest because they are cranking out oil like no other. But a lot of these are in the Middle East, and that is for a reason. Because of that time, they made a huge amount of money. There was a lot of things happening politically in the Middle East in the 70s, but most importantly, all of that money that they made from that oil embargo, they had to find somewhere to park it. It was vital for them to find somewhere to park it, right? So now you're like, okay, Hunter, that's cool, that makes sense. So then what? Well, let's fast forward a little bit, okay? Let's fast forward to the early 2000s, 2003 to be specific, right? We already know what happens. The U.S. invades Iraq, right? The entire region is destabilized. Oil prices shoot up like crazy, and by 2004, oil breaks like $40 a barrel, and it just keeps on climbing. And from 2003, really, to 2008, oil jumps by more than $100, y'all. And at this point, this is like a fracture in the world economy, kind of like forever, to be honest with you. And suddenly, all of these oil-rich nations, like I said, especially in the Middle East, are generating literally trillions of dollars in surplus cash. Like, I cannot even begin to explain to you. They were swimming in money, like Scrooge McDuck, like just bathing in literally bathing in money. And they decide that they're going to store that money in sovereign wealth funds, okay? So keep that in mind. Middle East, sovereign wealth fund money because of oil prices shooting up. This is why the commodity market is so important. It's like, there are forces that are moving when you're at the pump and you're like, oh my God, gas is up high. Like, there are forces that are moving right now behind the scenes that you have no idea, and they like it that way. Oh my goodness. Okay, so they store their money in sovereign wealth funds, which then spread into everything, okay? Because remember, I told you they're aggressive. So they start putting their money into hedge funds and private equity and real estate and energy and infrastructure all over the globe, literally everywhere. There is a quote that I have here from Dr. Gal Luft from the Institute for the Analysis of Global Security, who told Congress in 2008, quote, "The rise of sovereign wealth funds is a part of a new economic world order," end quote. Think about that. This was in 2008, in the middle of the financial crisis, a global financial crisis. He's like, yo, the writing's on the wall. Like, this is a new paradigm here. We're in uncharted territory. And he warned Congress that sovereign wealth funds held around $3.5 trillion back then. And actually, within a decade, it would hit $10 to $15 trillion. So, like, this man, oh my goodness gracious, literally underestimated dramatically just how much money they were raking in. And this is in the time when nobody had any money at all whatsoever. And he was completely right. It was a new financial paradigm. And today, sovereign wealth funds, honestly, are among the most powerful financial forces on the entire planet. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, like I said, that makes sense why Donald Trump would be like, oh, let's float this idea out here. Maybe the U.S. needs a sovereign wealth fund. But it wasn't fleshed out, like I'm saying. Like, it was just a passing thought. So sovereign wealth funds are great. Before I, get into what happened between the U.S. and Chicago and a sovereign wealth fund, I want you to know sovereign wealth funds are good. Like I told you, the citizens that are living in Alaska, they probably are rubbing their hands like Birdman when that check comes in. It's a wonderful thing. A nation who's responsible with its resources and finds a way to disperse it back to the people is a fantastic thing. I will never, ever doubt that. And, aggressive investing, I can't fault investors for investing. I'm an investor myself. Am I moving nearly $1.375 trillion? No. In my wildest dreams, maybe half that in my wildest dreams. Like, this is insane amounts of money, you guys. But they're looking for opportunities. And when those opportunities, show up for them, they're going to jump. And that brings us actually to Chicago. Okay. So look at that interesting man there, right? Man, ownership is everything. Once you give it up, you don't get it back. And this man right here learned the hard way. So this is a picture of the mayor of Chicago in 2008. He actually has he was the mayor for quite a while. I can't remember exactly how long he was the mayor. And actually, his dad was the mayor before him. This is Mayor Richard M. Daley. I know you're like, Richard M. Daley? Yes. His name is Dick M. Daley. Dickum Daley. So, forgive me, but I'm going to call him Mayor Dickum, or Dickum for short. Right? Because, man, when you see how he effed this city, he lives up to that name. So, 2008, right? Financial crisis has just hit. Chicago is really going through it. I'm talking about their tits up, really. It's a ticking time bomb. And the city is facing $150 million budget deficit, okay? So they have massive, like, long avoided pension obligations that they were like, well, we're going to figure it out some kind of way. I don't know how, but we're going to figure it out. And then, of course, right, the cost for social services is impacting them, and they're in the middle of a financial crisis. So obviously revenue is falling because home prices are falling. Everything is falling, right? And of course, when you are a yellow-toothed, smarmy mayor that's failing in knowledge, wisdom, and the ability to actually run a city, you realize, oh man, it's politically unpopular for me to raise taxes at a time like this. I got to figure out how to raise cash fast, right? And truthfully, if I'm the mayor, if I am this balding, yellow-toothed Mayor Dickum, the smart, responsible move to do is to issue a municipal bond, which honestly, I know that I probably would not get $150 million from, but cities do it all the time. And Chicago could have borrowed the money at a low interest rate. They could have kept the ownership of their assets, and they could have used the revenue to, pay off the debt. But Dickum Daley refused. Instead, he wanted a shortcut. And this shortcut has screwed Chicago to this very day, and it will haunt them for 75 years, okay? So what happened? Well, in late 2008, Morgan Stanley, right, one of the biggest investment banks in the world, you still hear about them every day whenever you're trading in the stock market, they approached the city with a solution. My God, the devil is just beautifully dressed, right? So Mayor Dickum is out there like, hey, I got these parking meters. Somebody come buy these parking meters. Come buy these parking meters. You're gonna get a lease. It's gonna be fantastic. Come on. So Morgan Stanley comes over. They say, hey, we're interested in what you got. Show us. And Chicago basically says, hey, we'll lease our entire parking meter system for the entire city for $1.16 billion in exchange for giving up control for 75 years. 3 generations, right? Like, if you really think about it. And what people don't know, or maybe they did know, I don't really know what was going through their minds, but behind Morgan Stanley was a group of private investors, including the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, which was one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the entire world. Okay? You still with me? So combine them and a couple of other smaller private investors as well. I say smaller, but small is so, I say small and it could be like $100 million investment fund, but we're talking about billions of dollars here. They formed Morgan Stanley and the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, right? They formed a company called Chicago Parking Meters LLC, or what I will refer to as CPM, okay? That's their shitty ass logo that's on LinkedIn. You can literally look this up on LinkedIn. Like, it's still out there. There is literally still out there, okay? And the craziest part about it is the city council for Chicago had 48 hours to review the contract. Excuse me, that Mayor Daley and Morgan Stanley and the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority created. So literally, most of them never even read it. And I think if you read Matt Taibbi's book, Griftopia, it goes into like over 20 pages. It explains all of this in painstakingly hilarious detail. But basically, it was like 8 pages long. And Most of the people involved, the aldermen, didn't even read it, but it got approved 40-5. There was a handful of them that balked, those five, and they to this day they're like, I don't know why, I don't know why. The rest of the 40 that voted for it never answer questions in regards to why they voted in favor of it. A lot of people say it could be a conspiracy theory. It could also be ignorance, and I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and postulate on what it could be. I just got to tell you what happened following this, right? Because once it got approved 40-5 in the end of December, or I should say at the beginning of December, because I think it was voted on the 8th of December, and it was posed to them like on the 4th. So literally it was like on Monday they said, hey, we're gonna have a vote, and by Thursday it had already passed. So this was like, I'm talking about quick. When it passed, Chicago received a quick $1.16 billion, and in return, CPM received 75 years of revenue, okay? So now, you're like, oh, well, this doesn't seem too bad, right? This is pretty good. Oh, ye of little faith, you have no clue what. Actually, maybe you do. Maybe you do know how these stories go at this point, because I've talked a lot about history of finance and all these crazy things. So, of course, what follows is a price hike explosion. The moment that CPM took over, prices absolutely skyrocketed. Neighborhood meters went from 25 cents to $1. Okay. Downtown fares went from $3 an hour to $6.50 an hour. Chicago's parking meters actually became the most expensive in the entire nation almost overnight. Before, meters were usually like Monday to Friday from, 9 a.m. to like 6 p.m. Now it was 7 days a week. It was all the time. Meters became active all day long. Nights and holidays, extended hours, higher rates, the whole shebang. Drivers were losing their freaking minds. I wonder if there's any video clips on YouTube. I wish that I could, if I was savvy enough to be able to throw clips and stuff in here, I totally would, and make this like a cinematic thing, because I don't think you're understanding. I mean, I can show you, right, this graph, and I can show you like, yo, we went from $45 million in revenue in 2009 to 140 by 2012, but that it's just it doesn't drive it home. I need to see some angry Chicagoans with a deep dish pizza like yelling into the camera, shaking it. It was really dramatically bad. Okay, so businesses, obviously people don't want to park and pay $20 to go in and sit down and eat at a restaurant. So businesses saw customers leave. Like, traffic enforcement was going berserk. It was terrible. And Chicago wasn't even allowed to push back, because one of the most insane parts of the contract was this thing called a true up penalty. Okay. Because CPM always gets paid, baby. Run me my money. This is where you realize just how rigged this entire system in this game is. CPM was so brilliant that in their contract, they said that they have to be compensated for any revenue that it might lose for any reason throughout the entire 75-year lease, okay? So this means, like, the city of Chicago, even right now, as you're listening to this, unless you're listening to it in 2084, whenever this contract is donezo, this is still happening right now. If the city of Chicago has anything happen, a street festival, that is, a parade going through, and they want to close down the street, gotta pay them. A water line breaks and people can't park there, gotta pay them. The city removes a meter, gotta pay them. A disabled parking space, you gotta pay them. Suspended enforcement during a major holiday, because Chicago's a pretty significant city in American history, right? Gotta pay them. A new building is being, built up, and there's going to be some blockages and they got to close off. Gotta pay them. Like, literally any kind of situation you could ever imagine. This is the true up, y'all. So it's basically a penalty system where CPM is always going to be paid, guaranteed profit forever. Well, I shouldn't say forever. Throughout the duration of this 75-year term period, right? So, by 2020, like, the pandemic, oh my God, I can't even imagine how much Chicago had to pay during the pandemic for just all the true up that it needed because of, closures of the entire well, the entire nation. But I mean, man, they've paid hundreds of millions of dollars in true up penalties. Like, this is one of the greatest investments ever. If you invested in this and you were able to, you would have made so much money. It would actually make you feel, maybe make you feel guilty if you had a soul. These people don't really have a soul, so I'm sure that they just laugh their way to the bank every single day. But that's not even the most humiliating part, right? This is the most humiliating part. The city has to ask CPM for permission to turn off meters on holidays. And guess what CPM says to them? F you, pay me, right? Like, literally, you're cucked in your own city. It's disgusting. It's actually so anti-American. It makes my heart ache. And I can't imagine being a Chicagoan and every time you gotta, drop those coins in, you just feel like, man, I'm taking it up the backside right now. Holy smokes. Chicago, a major American city, has to ask a foreign-backed investment company, hey, can we take a day off, please? Like, we don't really want to have the meters on. Can we please? And that right there, honestly, I could end the video right here without telling you all the rest of the juicy details, because that's what happens when you give up ownership. That's why I get on y'all's heads every single time I drop a video, because what you don't know is when you're not an owner, you're just a beggar and you got to ask permission, man. And I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission every single time. I don't care. I don't want to be cucked. I just don't. I don't want to have to be asking and have some, jabronis that aren't even from here, sun me and rub my head and give me a noogie. Oh my God, it makes my skin crawl. And the fact that it's in the Middle East, like, I don't have anything against people in the Middle East. Please don't take it as xenophobia. What I'm saying is, you're not gonna sun me in my own country where I'm paying taxes, where I'm living. I rep Texas hard as fuck. If you know me, I rep Texas so hard. I will be, don't even get me started on the George Bush Turnpike, but I digress, okay? So, man, the long-term loss, let's kind of pivot a little bit here, because I'm about to get worked up and it's like literally 10 p.m. and this is stuff that I think about at night, man. This is the reason why I'm so upset is, like, cities are supposed to own their own revenue generating assets. Ownership is control and flexibility, right? It's the ability for you to, like, plan for the future and profit, most importantly, right? Like, geez, Chicago just gave all of that away. And in the first 12 years of the deal, y'all, CPM already made back their entire $1.16 billion in 12 years. Everything else has been pure profit. And estimates say that CPM is going to make 10 to 20 billion dollars, okay, over the full 75-year term. And that's assuming that they're not, adjusting for inflation and bumping things up every single year. Like, this is an insane situation. And Chicago could have made the money for itself. They could have just taken the principle. It was, Matt Taibbi describes it in more detail in the book, and forgive me, it's been a couple years since I've read it, but one of the aldermen was basically like, with this money, for whatever reason, they rushed the deal, and interest rates, during 2008 have been slashed to literally nothing. They were rushing to get this money. If they had just waited and chilled out and got the money a little bit later, they would have been able to receive great interest on that money, and maybe they would have been able to facilitate from the interest, right? You take the lump sum of money and, from your, mind you, not from this foreign investment group, from your municipal bond offering, and you invest that money. The interest that you receive on it, you're going to have to say, okay, well, payments are going to be deferred, or they're going to be a little bit smaller than you hope, but we're going to make you right. We're going to make you whole. And then use that money's interest to actually rock and roll and pay back people. And now you still have ownership of your items. Like, there's just, I don't know. There's so many ways that they could have swung this and made this look better, in my opinion. And like, they could have made that money for themselves, without giving up that ownership. It could have fixed the pensions and built up the schools and repaired the roads and invested in the communities. And Lord knows Chicago has issues with I'm not gonna sit here and lie like the black community isn't going through it in Chicago. Like, I know that there's problems, like systemic, real issues, and I don't know. I'm not saying that the city's obligated to, come out of pocket solely for one community, but I'm like, man, that extra money probably could have gone towards something beneficial. Maybe after school programs at schools, they'll be able to keep kids off the streets and make it a little bit safer. Like, literally, oh my goodness. It's just more than a notion. But the people in charge chose the quick fix, right? And that's the problem with a lot of American politics these days. I'm going to just say it. That is the problem. We have a lot of people right now who are passing legislation and doing things that are going to impact generations that they'll never live to see. They will, the onus falls on the leadership that will be in place at that time. These people are 60 and 70 and 80 years old passing legislation that's going to impact people who are, in middle school right now, in high school right now, people who are graduating college right now. And they don't care because they've got their pension locked in. And in 5 years, they're going to be long gone. They might be dead even. And they don't care. They're like, it was good for me. Like, I got out while the getting was good. And that is the problem. Future generations are left holding the bag, and future generations are tired of holding the bag. That's what corruption looks like. That's what all of these politicians acting like they're so confused why I don't have the younger vote. Why don't we have the younger vote? On the left and the right, both sides are saying the same thing. That's why. That is exactly why, because it's what corruption looks like. It's dressed up like smart policy when in reality it's just passing the buck down to the next generation and saying, this is something you'll have to deal with. Man. So, Dickum, let's get back to him, right? Here's where it gets almost unbelievable. Like, just to really put the icing on the cake, as if it couldn't get more insane. A month and a half after selling Chicago's parking meters, right? Taking this horrible deal. In reality, they actually did the math and they said that he could have gotten like something insane, like $15 billion would have been fair value for the parking meters. But a month and a half after selling the parking meters, Mayor Dickum decides to give advice to the newly inaugurated President Barack Obama, who, as you know, is from Illinois, Chicago specifically, right? He told him, and I quote, "You need to think outside of the box to solve the country's revenue problems. If they start leasing public assets, every city, every county, every state, and the federal government, you would not have to raise any taxes whatsoever. You would have more infrastructure money that way than any other way in the nation." End quote. This dude was not ashamed of what he did. In fact, he was proud. I think that's the most egregious part of it. Like, oh my God, our forefathers would just, oh gosh, I can't even begin. He thought America should follow Chicago's lead, that we should just sell it all. We should just whore our nation out to foreign sovereign wealth funds and say, hey, we got the money today. Let's party today. The music's still playing. Look at him grinning. And I mean, man, in many ways, he's kind of right. And America kind of did follow suit. Like, this is not, it's not the only place that like decided to sell off its assets. You know what I'm saying? Like Miami and New York, LA. Just, man. So, man, oh man. I guess I should wrap this up. It's been about half an hour and I'm just rambling at this point, just giving you random extra information. When you look at this though, when you look at this Chicago deal, it's not just like, oh, a little mistake, oh me, oh my. This is like actually so symbolic of how the people in charge in this modern era think about the future. And the way they think about the future is by not thinking about the future at all. Because by the time, like I said, the consequences, by the time it gets real, they're retired, they're out of office, they're dead, they're long gone, they're on a beach somewhere. They decided to get a job at, in the nation that the sovereign wealth fund that, basically, I hate to use such incendiary language, but raped the nation They're working over there for a private company. Like, it's just the bill. The bill is always going to land on your doorstep. That's the thing that I want you to understand. It's always, and if it's not your doorstep, it's going to be your kids or your grandkids. When you look at that little sweet baby in the eyes and you understand that the people who are in charge right now, they're the ones who are passing that down to them. They're saying that kid is not worth what it would be for me to go through the hard time right now and to own up to the mistakes that my generation made, or maybe even the generation before, but being willing to do the hard thing now. They're willing to sacrifice that sweet little face that looks up at you with so much joy and naivety. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And that's what a rigged system is. And that's what everybody's sick of. Like, decisions made by people who will never, ever have to pay the price. And if they did have to pay the price, they got the money to be able to do it 10 times over. They don't care. They don't live like you. They probably haven't lived like you in decades. But you got to pay the price. That's the thing, right? You're working as hard as you can, trying to make ends meet. And suddenly decisions made decades ago by leaders who wanted quick wins and re-election campaigns hits you right where it hurts. In your paycheck, in your pocket, right? It's the parking, it's the taxes, it's the city services, your neighborhood. It's not this, amorphous thing. Like, it is so real, and it is personal, and it is happening all over this nation. Matt Taibbi, in his book, I'm gonna pull it up here. I got the book in front of me, but I just, it's taken me a little while to get to the right page here. He says, quote, Nashville and Pittsburgh are speeding ahead with their own parking meter deals, as is Los Angeles. New York has considered it. Miami just announced its own plans. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Miami and New York and LA. Yep. Highways, airports, parking garages, toll roads, almost everything you can think of that isn't nailed down, and some things that are for sale to bidders unknown around the world. America is literally, y'all, being sold off piece by piece. And most of us don't even realize that it's happening. All we do is we see the prices go up and we're like, what the hell? But once again, I never give you bad news without giving you a solution. I'll never do it. And here is the good news, okay? We don't have to accept the system that feels rigged, right? We don't have to accept leaders who mortgage off our future at the expense of, looking pretty on paper for the next election campaign. We don't have to give away our own ownership. That's what really, gives us power at the end of the day. Like, your voice matters, and your vote matters, and your awareness of things that are going on around you matter as well. Like, man, once you understand how the game is played, you can't stop thinking about how you are consistently the one that's being played. And this is the epitome of America for sale. And it's time to take it back. And how do we do that? By buying Bitcoin. And I know you think that's crazy. I know you do. But I need you to understand, when you own a slice of a coin, a whole coin, multiple coins, thousands of coins, if you're so blessed, you are in control of your money. It cannot be debased. They cannot steal value and wealth from you. Yes, if you're going to live in these cities, you will probably be subjected to, you'll be subjected to all of this BS. You're going to have to pay crazy parking fees, and toll roads are going to get more expensive because they're owned by, some nation that you've never traveled to and you wouldn't want to travel to if you had the opportunity to anyway. It's just the way that life goes. But protecting and preserving your purchasing power stops people like Dickham and people like, you could name any mayor, right? I just listed off 4 or 5 different cities that had all been considering back whenever this was written. What year was that? Does it say? 2011. This was written in 2011. You think that other mayors aren't just as bad as Dickham Daley? Oh, man, I can't get over that name. Shonda Rhimes couldn't have come up with something so apt and fitting for a man like this. But yeah, guys, I've been yapping at you for 40 minutes here. I hope that this kind of gives you an idea of what sovereign wealth funds are and just how absolutely insane. This is just one story, by the way. Sovereign wealth funds have reached into all sorts of aspects of your life, your daily life. Daily, that's kind of funny. So with that, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I hope you guys got a little enjoyment out of this video. This was much more chaotic than my usual content, but this is my most authentic self. You get the schizo rambling at 10:30 p.m. So with that, you know I love y'all. I'm going to try to really knock out some more videos pretty soon here. So, you know, keep your eyes peeled and let me know in the comments. Once again, I will make videos based off of whatever you guys want to hear. Okay? Love y'all. Hope your week is going great, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace.